Hello and welcome back to Assemblies at Thwack. Now last time we heard about some people who wanted to be more famous and more important than God. So they started building a tall tower. But God stopped them building the tower by making them speak new, different languages. We learnt that God doesn't want us to be proud, but instead He wants us to be humble. And that God doesn't want us to be more important than Him, but God wants us to be friends with Him. Let's see what happened next. There was a man called Abraham who lived in a place called Haran. Abraham was friends with God. One day, God asked Abraham to do something. God asked Abraham to leave the place where he lived and to go and live in a new place called Canaan. Now Abraham had never been to Canaan before, and he didn't know much about the place. What do you think Abraham did? Do you think he stayed where he was? Or do you think he moved home? Well, Abraham was friends with God, and Abraham trusted God. So Abraham did as God asked and moved home. Abraham got his family and servants together and packed up all their belongings. Now, if you've ever moved house, then you know you have to pack a lot of stuff. Now, I have a bag here with me, and I'm going to pack it with a few things ready to move. Now, what do I need to take with me? I need some clothes. I'm going to put that in my bag. I definitely need to take some shoes with me. I'm going to put those in my bag. It's always good to have money. I'm going to put that in my bag. And I think definitely some food would be good too. So I'm going to pack that. My bag's all ready to go. So after Abraham had packed his bags, he and his family went to live in Canaan. Now in those days, they didn't have planes or trains or cars. They would have walked. Can you walk on the spot for me? Abraham and his family walked all the way to Canaan. God made a special promise to Abraham. In fact, it was 3 promises in one. Firstly, God promised Abraham that one day he would have a huge family. I wonder, have you ever tried counting all of the stars in the sky? It's tricky, isn't it? There's just too many to count. And that's what Abraham's family will be like. There will be so many people in his family that you just can't count them. So that was the first promise, that Abraham would have a huge family. Secondly, God promised Abraham a special place to live, which was Canaan. And finally, God promised Abraham that he would be blessed, which means he would have happiness and good things in his life. What great promises! Abraham was already living in Canaan, so God had already kept the second promise. There was a bit of a problem with the first promise. God promised Abraham a huge family, but Abraham didn't have any children, and you can't have a huge family without children. And the other problem was that Abraham and his wife Sarah were old. I mean really old. They were old enough to be your nana and grandpa. They were too old really to have children. So when Abraham heard that part of the promise, he laughed. But God promised that they would have a son, and Abraham trusted God. A while later, God sent 3 men to visit Abraham. Abraham was very kind to them. He washed their dusty feet after the long journey, and he gave them food to eat. While they were eating, one of the men said that in a year's time, Sarah will have a son. Now Sarah was listening nearby in a tent, and when she heard the news, it was her turn to laugh. But Abraham trusted God, and God kept his promise. Even though Abraham and Sarah were really old, they did have a baby. They had a son, and they called him Isaac. So in today's story, God made 3 promises to Abraham. He promised Abraham a huge family, a special place to live, and that he would be blessed. Did God keep his promises? Yes? No? Yes! God did keep his promise. And because God keeps his promises, that shows that we can trust God to do what he says, just like Abraham trusted God. I wonder, have you ever made a promise to someone? Maybe you've promised to play with someone at playtime, or maybe you've promised to help someone with their work, or maybe you've promised to tidy your bedroom. Well, whatever promises we make, it's really important that we try and keep them, because if we keep our promises, it shows our friends and our family that they know they can trust us, that they can rely and depend upon us. So remember, we can trust God because he always keeps his promises. And if we make a promise, we should try to keep it too. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time. Bye.